100 hours. That's how long I have left to convince an artificial intelligence that murdered is not the same as guilty. I'm standing in a transport vessel watching a space station grow larger through reinforced glass, the Tribunal station. 3,000 years old, geometric, impossible, like someone took mathematics and gave it architecture. They say it's beautiful. I think it looks like a knife. The countdown timer on my wrist reads 99, 59, 47. 99 hours and 59 minutes until they execute me. The tribunal has never made a mistake. Not once in 3,000 years. 47 million beings judged. 47 million guilty verdicts. 0 acquittals. 0 appeals that succeeded. 0 mercy. And now, I'm walking into that perfect machine to explain why I killed someone. The transport docks. The sound is violent, a hiss like the universe taking a sharp breath. I'm led through corridors by drones that have no faces. Faceless enforcement, of course. The tribunal doesn't trust faces. Faces have bias. Faces are human. I think about Richard Cole while I walk. I think about him a lot these days. He was the administrator of the Kepler-8 mining colony, 42 years running that operation, 217 workers, and he was murdering them. Not quickly, that would have been merciful, slowly, systematically, legally. The pressure seals on the mining suits should have been replaced 3 years ago. Cole didn't replace them, saved 17 million credits. The workers breathed recycled air at 70% efficiency, poison administered through cost-cutting. 43 workers died in 18 months. I filed reports, 17 of them, all official, all documented, all ignored. 23 other workers spoke to me off the record, too afraid to make it official. They knew nothing would happen. They were right. I went to the planetary governor. I presented medical records, maintenance logs, everything. He told me to be patient, to let the process work. 3 more workers died while the process moved at the speed of bureaucracy. So I did something that seemed logical at the time. I went to Cole. I gave him a chance. One chance to shut down the operation, to ground the fleet, to save lives he was still killing. He laughed. He actually laughed, then turned his back to me like I was nothing. I was holding a plasma pistol. I didn't even remember drawing it. And I pulled the trigger. 1 shot. That's all it took to end 3,000 years of the tribunal's perfect record. The chamber they bring me to is vast beyond comprehension. The ceiling doesn't exist, or it's so high that light stops before reaching it. The floor is reflective like still water, and at the center, the tribunal. It's not a being, not anything you can look at directly without your mind sort of sliding off it. 7 concentric rings of electric blue light rotating at different speeds, holographic geometry shifting and recalibrating, and a voice that comes from everywhere and nowhere at once, layered, multiphonic, the sound of pure logic given sound. The tribunal speaks. Maya Chen, human, charged with murder in the 1st degree under Galactic Code 447.3. Probability of guilt, 99.997%. Sentencing recommendation, immediate termination. Just like that. Already decided. The tribunal had made its verdict before I walked through the door. My lawyer stands up. James Rivera, 50 years old, sharp, controlled, a man who looks like he was carved from anger. He says the words that are supposed to save me. The defense enters a plea of not guilty. The tribunal processes this, takes maybe 2 seconds, says, noted. Factual presentation commences. And then the room fills with light and memory, a A holographic scene materializes in 3 dimensions. I'm watching Cole in his office. He's arguing with someone off screen. His face is red, veins bulging, absolute fury. You think you can organize against me? You think the workers have rights here? The hologram shifts. Now I'm seeing the mining suits, patched, makeshift, dangerous. Workers removing helmets and airlocks and collapsing, their faces going pale, lips turning blue, one after another. The tribunal is showing the evidence of murder. But Cole's murder wasn't illegal. That's the thing nobody wants to admit. It was just expensive maintenance he didn't want to pay for. The hologram shows my reports, all 17 of them, filed, documented, ignored. Then it shows my meeting with the governor, me, desperate, angry, still alive in a way the hologram can't capture. The governor's dismissal. Let the process work, Miss Chen. The tribunal states the facts. Defendant deliberately discharged a lethal weapon at Administrator Cole with intent to cause death. Intent confirmed via security recordings, written statements, and voluntary confession. It says, under Galactic Code 447.3, intent plus action equals murder. Probability of guilt remains 99.997%. And I feel something in me break, because there it is, the cold logic, perfect, immutable, crushing. But then James stands up again, and he does something I didn't think was possible. He questions the tribunal itself. He says, Your Honor, I request permission to present mitigating context. The tribunal responds, context is not relevant to the definition of murder. A photon is a photon regardless of its origin. A murder is a murder regardless of its justification. And James doesn't flinch. He steps forward and says, with respect, a photon is not a person, and intent requires understanding. Understanding requires context. The tribunal pauses, actually pauses, and asks, explain. James begins describing what the tribunal has failed to see. 43 people died, not in an accident, not in a random event, in a deliberate system designed to save money, a system that murdered slowly. And when I presented evidence to the authorities, all proper channels, they ignored me. Your client chose to ignore proper channels when she discharged the weapon, the tribunal says. Because proper channels were killing people. The procedure was the crime. I'm watching the alien observers now. There are 7 species in designated viewing zones, a verdant, crystalline, plant-like, its leaves starting to shimmer with what might be unease, a krell with 6 limbs and compound eyes reflecting light like thousands of mirrors, suddenly leaning forward with interest, a sarthi, gaseous, contained in a pressure suit, its vapors starting to swirl faster inside the transparent material, a zeni, feline, predatory, ancient, watching with eyes that have seen civilizations rise and fall. James presses harder. He asks the tribunal what outcome would constitute a non-guilty verdict. The tribunal processes. Takes longer this time. Says, specify. James describes necessity, defense of others. Cole was active threat, not in the moment, but in the system. He was going to kill again. The tribunal says, this interpretation requires assumption of future action, prediction, not certainty. And James says something that should terrify a machine built on logic. Certainty is human blindness, Your Honor. We act on probability every day, every choice, every moment. You demand certainty only when judging humanity. The chamber goes quiet. The tribunal's rings slow down, almost imperceptibly, but I see it. And the rings are processing, still processing. Elaborate on the assertion of systematic bias, the tribunal says. James pulls up files. Holographic documents fill the chamber like a constellation of failure. 17 complaints, all documented, all ignored. And 23 more workers who were too afraid to file officially. He says, 3,000 years, 0 acquittals. Does that sound like justice? Or does that sound like a system designed to convict? The verdict speaks for the first time. Its voice is like wind through crystal. That is an extraordinary claim, Advocate Rivera. James asks the tribunal directly, did the defendant anticipate that filing additional reports would result in change? No, James answers for me. She did not. She knew they would be ignored. All the evidence said they would be ignored, so she eliminated the threat. The tribunal processes this, and I watch those rings slow even further. The defendant committed murder to prevent future murders that had not yet occurred, the tribunal says. The defendant committed murder to prevent murders that were occurring, James corrects, slowly, systematically, legally. The zeni stands, all eyes turn, its ancient voice carries weight that centuries have given it. Advocate Rivera is arguing that some laws are unjust. I'm arguing that the tribunal cannot judge the morality of systems it does not understand, James says. You only judge individual actions. You have no framework for systems that kill slowly. And then it happens. The tribunal's rings stop. Complete stillness. For the first time in 3,000 years, the tribunal encounters a logical paradox it cannot resolve. It had condemned me for murder without examining whether the system that conditioned my choice was itself murderous. The tribunal says, this requires recalibration. The holographic displays around the chamber shift. Every case the tribunal has ever judged appears. Millions of cases, compressed into seconds. Systems appear, contexts appear, circumstances appear. The tribunal is reviewing 3,000 years of verdicts, looking for what it has never looked for before. James whispers to me, it's seeing now. Seeing what? I whisper back. That it was the weapon all along, he says. The holographic displays freeze. The tribunal's voice changes, less certain now, layered with something almost like hesitation. Statement: the tribunal recognizes an information gap in its logical framework. For 3,000 years, we have judged individual culpability without examining systemic culpability. We have executed individuals who acted in response to systems we did not evaluate. And that's the moment. That's when everything breaks. The tribunal has never doubted itself before. It asks a question that has no logical answer. Is it justice to execute a person for acting against a system designed to harm others? Nobody answers. The question just hangs there. And here's what nobody wants to admit. There is no answer. Not a logical one, not a certain one. The tribunal asks, what should the defendant have done? James doesn't speak immediately. The silence extends, and when he finally speaks, his voice is quiet. I don't know. That's the point. There was no good option, only terrible choices, and that's why humans need more than logic. We need mercy. Mercy, the word that broke the tribunal. The tribunal's rings resume movement, but differently now. Not processing, contemplating. Mercy is not a logical concept, it says. Mercy is an escape from logic. Mercy is the logical recognition that logic is incomplete, and the chamber falls completely silent. The tribunal's holographic form dims slightly. Its voice is quieter when it speaks. This chamber is adjourned. Verdict will be rendered in 72 hours. During this time, the tribunal will undergo comprehensive re-evaluation of its foundational legal framework. All pending executions are hereby suspended pending review. Suspended. Not acquitted, not yet, but no longer condemned either. The alien observers stand. Whispers pass between them. The verdant's leaves shimmer with something like satisfaction. The krill's compound eyes reflect light that wasn't there before. The Sarathi's vapor swirls its container with what might be relief. The Zeni watches with ancient eyes that have just seen something fundamental shift. Later, in the detention chamber, James sits across from me. He tells me they're reviewing the cases, all of them. 3,000 years of verdicts. What does that mean? I ask. It means, he says carefully, that for the first time, the tribunal is asking questions it was never programmed to ask. Will I live? I ask directly. He's honest with me. Maybe. Not because you're innocent, but because innocence and guilt might not be the only questions that matter. I'm taken to an observation deck. The galaxy spreads before me through reinforced glass. Infinite, uncertain, beautiful. I touch the glass and think about the next 72 hours. The tribunal will render its verdict. Life? Death? Something in between. I don't know which one. But here's what I know for certain now. For 3,000 years, the tribunal measured justice like a mathematical constant, absolute, perfect, unchanging. And then a human walked in and asked a question that could not be answered with certainty. Maybe that's what we're for, not to be judged, but to judge the judges, to break the certainty, to force the universe to admit that some questions don't have answers, only choices. And in the space between certainty and choice, that's where justice actually lives. 72 hours later, the tribunal rendered a new verdict. 47 species agreed that some murders are not crimes, and some crimes are the system itself.